Completely. Thank you so much for joining us. It's so lovely to have you with us.
Man, it's my pleasure.
Such a
My
privilege.
pleasure.
So when you see that scene, we very deliberately picked that very early scene from The Last of Us, which
Yeah.
I think a lot of people won't have seen for a little while, unless they're playing, some of the later editions on PS5 or whatever. They won't have seen that. How does that kind of take you back to that first performance?
What has surprised me about this game specifically and that moment is that I am constantly met with those who have never experienced it. So they've experienced it for the first time, or people who, well, just for whatever reason, it's a fun game to play, but we'll go back and play that game multiple times. There's more people that have said, "Hey, I've completed that game. This is my 10th playthrough." I'm like, "Yo, I was in it, and you spent more time in it than I did." I think I've beaten the game. I've played through the game to completion probably 4 times. But it's that moment still to this day gets me in a way that I can count on one hand the impact that games have had like that with me. And so much of it, the first time you watch it, we experienced that. I'll never forget the first time that I played through it. It was literally our launch day or the midnight before, and we had gone to a launch event with Naughty Dog, and Neil was there with us, and he goes out to his car in his beat up old Toyota Prius, and he looks at Ashley and he goes, I have a gift for you guys," and he handed us 2 copies, and Ashley and I looked at each other and we're like, "You're coming over to my house right now." And she came over, and it was like 11:30, 12 o'clock at night, I think, at that point. And we sat on my couch, and I remember the first time we saw that Naughty Dog logo come up, and I was instantly thrown back to 2007, the first time I played Uncharted. And I had played, their games before, but it was specifically when I played Uncharted that I was like, I saw this like new star on the horizon, and I was like, that's what I want to do, that what those people are doing, and I specifically want to work with them. And here I am, sat next to an amazing, beautiful human being that over the last 2.5 years, we've shared these incredibly seminal, intimate moments. And we've laughed and we've cried. We've done so much life together. And we're watching in real time this what we've been working on happen in front of us, just like every other consumer. There were other people all over the world that at that moment were doing the exact same thing that we were doing. And it was this great sense of community. And we played through the prologue and we wept. and then she left and she was like, "I'm going to go home and play this myself." And every time I play through that specific part of the game, I pick up something new. And I think, and conversely, I also leave something there. So it's a cool trade-off, because I had to leave my ego behind with that scene, because that's what was the driving force the first time we shot it, is I wanted my performance to be lauded, and I wanted people to recognize me for being a good actor. And that intent subsequently caused that scene to fail. And it's a beautifully, incredibly well conceived and executed scene on the page. And then you put it in my hands, and my ego said, "Watch this," and I ran with it. To the point, and a lot of people heard me tell this story, many times before, but about a month later, Neil came to me and says, "We need to reshoot a scene," and I just looked at him and was like, "I'm serious," and he broke it down for me so well. And you can say whatever you want about Neil. I probably said some stuff too, but anybody who says that he's not a good writer is not a good writer. You don't understand the craft of art. And I know that from experience, because I questioned Neil's writing in the very beginning. And then I understood that it wasn't his lack of understanding of the craft, it was mine that caused me to have that perspective. And I remember him, this is the moment that I realized I was opposite and had the benefit of being with such an incredibly gifted director and writer, because I came into that scene going, watch this. And he came into that scene empty. He had emptied all of himself out into this page, into this scene, and was waiting to be filled. And I walked into it filled up, trying to empty myself. And that's not what you can do in a scene. If you do that inherently, you are cut off from, unless you're doing a monologue and it's a one-man show, even then you can't come and fill, because then there's nothing to, there's no room for the audience. And I walked in and I was like, when we were picking it up the second time, he goes, I'm picking up on some resistance, because we had shot it. This is now our third or fourth take on the second reshoot, or the second time of shooting, so the reshoot. And it's like, you're damn right you're picking up on some resistance, because we've got it in the can and you're wasting my time, the crew's time. And what you're going to do is you're going to go back to the edit bay and realize, we got on the first take, because of course I was such a brilliant actor. And he says, here's what I have. I have a man broken. I'm like, yeah, his daughter just died. Of course he's broken. He goes, what I don't have is what's happening. This is happening. I can fix it. It's not working. She's going. She's gone. I'm broken. The 7-act play that happens in the course of 45 seconds, maybe a minute. That's good writing. And he was right. I was wrong. I was like, there's so many micro steps that happened, and I was just going for the gut punch. And he said, you know what you haven't done any of these times? So you haven't looked at her. Just look at her. And that was the unlock. I brought myself into the scene with my scene partner. And now it was, how can I serve her, as opposed to how can this scene serve me? And that was the first thing that I learned about this scene. And then I walked, through it several times before, and you're not alone. People, play the clip, because that's the one that they go, that was the watershed moment in gaming and it was intentional. That was in the very beginning of the game, because we want to show that games can entertain, they can educate, they can inform, they can thrill. But can we put you through the same kind of emotional journey where at one point, whether it be in the very beginning of the game or the very end, you set the controller down, you go, I don't know if I can or if I want to finish this. And then can we make you pick the controller back up and finish it? That's why this game to me stands alone. And not just this one, but it's part of the game. It's part of the story. It's part one of this story. And for me, that's what makes it such a wholly unique experience. And not just because, by and large, it is, I say that phrase a lot, sorry. It has been the impetus for me being able to be a part of conversations like this. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. I've been a part of some great games and had some great roles. But this is one that, as you can tell by my 3-minute reply to a very simple question, I never, ever get tired of talking about this game. And I'm honored to be with you guys today.
Dude, the honor is ours. And please feel free to spend 3 hours answering a single question. But there's one thing before Imre jumps in that I want to ask, which is, there's one moment that I particularly love in that scene. And it's right at the end, which is where you brush the lock of hair out of her eyes and put it behind the ear. Now, in development terms, I can see 10 programmers, that moment thinking, how are we going to achieve? Did you do that in the performance, or was that?
Yeah. So I was jumping all over to the prologue. Of course, I'm just kind of putting that in the full context. But going back to specifically, the only thing that Neil said was, he was like, I need you to actually pick her up. Can you carry her? And I was like, yeah, I can carry her. I think I can carry her. I'm trying to carry her. I don't know. Hannah, you down for this? We picked up and they had built, just a few steps, so we could actually get that motion of doing that. And, when we were shooting the first game, we didn't have like the helmet cams and everything else. So we were a lot more free. We weren't as encumbered by technology. It was a pain in the ass for the animators, but we had more freedom. And so the worst part of it is just Velcro. You're just nothing but just a trainer walking around, And so we knew that some of the audio was going to be blown, and I'm kind of aware of that. I have enough experience at that point to go, if you're going to do any dialogue, there was no dialogue. written at least. But it's like, if you're going to do any dialogue, do it clean. So at least we can get it, not have to ADR it. So I'm carrying her up the stairs and we cut, and then we walk in as a separate piece, and I'm still carrying her, and I put her down into the makeshift bed that they had built. And it was just kind of like, I'm trying to remember if it was my idea or it may have been Neil's idea. I want to make sure that whoever gets credit for it, because it sounds like a detail that Neil would have gotten, even though all the animators, like you said, would be like, don't do that. But it could very well be. There's a scene in part 2 where I decided to put my hand kind of like in what would be Joel's belt. And I found out that, brief pause, tangent. If you played Uncharted 3, the capsizing ship scene was at that point. In Uncharted 1, the jack camera that spins around, and as the boulder's coming at you, kind of Raiders moment, as you're running, when you first are doing that, running the crash cam, as they call it, Crash Bandicoot, the running into camera as something is happening behind you. They do that in every Naughty Dog game. But that moment where there's the bridge is going out and there's things that are happening behind you, that was the most ambitious thing that they've ever done. In 2, it was the train sequence where you're jumping from each train car to train car. Uncharted 3, they ramped it up and it became the ship capsizing moment. In The Last of Us Part 1, I can't remember what the moment was, but in Left Behind, the DLC, the photo booth was the most expensive thing that they ever done. It was real-time assets that were responding dynamically, and it was the most expensive thing they'd ever done. Almost broke the game. I decided as a choice to have my thumb in my belt, and they were like, that's the most ambitious thing that we had to do, and you almost broke the game. And they did it. They made it happen. Because they were like, that's a detail that's completely driven by character. It's not an affectation. So we want to make that thing happen. So I can see me being the one who's like, what if I just do this thing that just breaks the entire game? You know, that could have very well been the whole reason, you know, we had to up the budget and they had to go to Sony. He was like, can you give us more billions of dollars? Because Troy wanted to move a lock of hair. But it was the Goodnight Baby Girl. That, and he said, Neil goes, that's what you call her. And it wasn't like, the script says baby girl. It was just Goodnight Baby Girl. That's just a good old Texas thing. And we carry that through, obviously, because then that becomes the touch point for when you know that there's a change in Joel, and Ellie has not replaced Sarah, nor has she become Sarah, but it simply serves as a marker for, do you understand that there's now the same connection? There is the surrogacy of fatherhood, and she is a daughter character. So that was such a beautiful moment to be able to capture, and you can't capture that in a booth. I mean, sometimes I drive writers crazy because I always give one as written, but then I always like to dance. You know, to me, this is playing jazz, and some of the most beautiful moments are created as an accident. And so many times I'll do something or say something. People are like, what did you say? I was like, I don't know. You were recording it. You tell me what I said. I have no idea. If you liked it, keep it. If you didn't, burn it. But that to me seems like it's a result, regardless of who came up with the idea of brushing the hair away. It was born completely out of walking onto a stage with such confidence that is not absent of fear, by the way. If I'm not afraid, and Imre is very much like this. He and I are just, our souls split because we rush headlong into the dangerous. We seek the risky, but it is very much if I'm not, I want to be fearless, but if I'm not scared every moment of what I'm doing, I'm not doing the right thing.
I'm not going to
ask.
He's
Hungarian.
I'm Hungarian.
Yeah, I know. If he's scared of something, then it really is bloody scary.
It's only garlic
Yeah.
and holy water.
It's your Bela Lugosi complex.
Bela Lugosi, that's what it is. I'm not going to ask your opinion. I'm just going to make a statement that I think that intro sequence is something I use via art. That sequence I have when I'm talking to TV and film people who don't know. That's the scene. That's the scene. That's I think our Citizen Kane. Like I think that moment. So I'm not asking because I know that you're too polite and you're gonna give a wishy-washy answer to this. I'm just gonna make a statement that scene. It is that. I'm gonna ask a different question.
Okay.
I know that how my life changed, and not that long ago, I picked up the game again because new generations consoles and whatever else like that. And that scene hit me very differently because my family situation changed.
Yeah.
So can I ask you that do you relate? You think that scene differently as you matured as a person and your personal life changed?
Yeah. I don't know if you or people that are watching have ever done something where you get through it and then you look back and you realize how treacherous it was. You're like, oh my God, how did I do that? It's like, dude, you just walk through bullets blazing past you and you're like, I didn't even know. If you had known what was really at stake, you probably couldn't have done it. Mm-hmm. I don't think I could have shot that scene. Either one of two things. I could have not been able to do it. Or I would have been able to get to the point that because Neil was a father at that point and I was not. And I remember many, many years ago when I was in my first band, a friend of mine started doing cocaine and I wanted to write a song about doing cocaine. I had never done cocaine, have never done cocaine. And so I was trying to write a song about cocaine and he came to me and he was like, never write about something you don't know. You can't write from a place you don't know about. And you're talking about it, but you're trying to write a song about someone from the first person. He goes, why don't you write a song about watching me do it? And then you could write about that. And that lesson stuck with me. It's like, I can't, it's acting if I'm trying to do something. And I think that's why it was such a struggle for me, is because at that point in my life, I was so selfish and I still am selfish. The difference is that my wants have changed and all I want to do is hang out with my son. It's the best part of my day when I wake him up and he goes from just crashed out, open mouth asleep. And I just put my hand on his chest. And I was like, good morning, monkey. And he looks at me and goes, Dad, talk about that monster truck. I just like instantly right back in the conversation. I'm like, yeah, dude, it was huge. It's a powerful engine. So I don't know if I could go back and do that scene again. The end of the prologue scene is what I'm talking about. But there's definitely the shift. When we did part one, I wasn't a father. Part two, I was, or is becoming a father. Still am becoming a father in many ways. I feel like I tangented off your question.
Oh no, that's beautiful. Please go on. Like, it doesn't matter what the question was.
But I think this is important because, and for the audience, spoilers if you've not played it, but look, it's a bit late, so you should
Yeah, it
just
came out almost 10 years ago.
Just bloody well play it, right?
At this point.
But actually, for part two,
Yeah.
at the point where you are a father, actually, the whole dynamic there has shifted. So that must have played into that role at that point, especially given the albeit broken relationship with Ellie at that point.
Yeah, when we pick up at part two, and this is not a spoiler at all, especially if you played part one, there's a schism in that relationship. And when I finally realized I would do anything, I would die for this person. And that's not a romantic notion. It's not any, there's not an ounce of heroism in that. It is just a fact. It is, the sky is blue. It is 23 minutes after the hour, and I would walk into that bus if it meant saving my son's life. It is a fully reflection of his importance, not mine, and really speaks more to his character. Because if he was a shitty kid, I might not do that, but he's an awesome kid. So I want the world to experience him. So that notion of I would do anything for this, and then to to realize I'm constantly litigating and Pam, my wife, and I are the same way. We're constantly, he's our favorite thing to talk about. And we are constantly having conversations about where he's at, what he needs. And this is not, we don't baby him. He will be a kid, he will be a kid like that, but he will be an adult for the rest of his life. And so we're focusing on the adult because the temporal and the ephemeral nature of diapers are gone. And he's just this human that's walking around that desperately is seeking conversation on multiple levels. And so we're speaking to that human. We're speaking to the adult who will one day be in traffic. And I want him to be a better man than I. I want him to not be ruled by his anger. I walk around every day with these medallions in my pocket. I have 8 of them, and each of them have a different maxim of stoicism on there. And it can be anything from like the 4 virtues of stoicism, which is courage, justice, temperance, and patience, or wisdom. Today is memento mori, which is remember that you will die. And the point of that is, if I can get comfortable with that notion, there's nothing that can scare me. And it also drives me. I had one of my favorite conversations with Imre was at the roof deck on the Me Hotel that's right there on the Strand in London. And he had just celebrated his 40th birthday, and I was celebrating my 40th birthday. It's like, I think maybe the day after or something like that. Anyway, right around our 40th birthday. And we raised our glasses to each other, and he said, to the next 480 months. And that's not I was like, that may be the weirdest translation of a very standard Hungarian toast, but you're going to have to bring me in. I don't know what you're talking about. He goes, well, statistically speaking, we live to be 80 years old. We're at the halfway point. And I never put it into such incremental terms. And I went 480 months. He was like, yeah, it really changes how you spend that month, doesn't it? When you realize, is this worth one of those 480 months? Because once it's gone, I'm now down to 479, 478. And since that conversation, there's been another 60 months that have gone by. Actually, 62 months. So everything that I do has to be for that kid. And the importance of that and the realization that every decision that I make, I've lived 45 years for me, I'm now living for him, is what I'm doing helping him. And what if one of those decisions that I made sent him spiraling further away from me? And I've experienced this too. And it's like, I don't want to do that for him. So that's where we pick up in part 2 is now there's this, and it's that notion. I don't know if you've ever seen Mission to Mars, or call it what you want. I think it's a brilliant movie. Tim Robbins, Gary Sinise. And there's this moment where Tim Robbins gets separated from his crew as they're moving from an orbiter trying to get to the surface of Mars. And he has to untether himself from them, and they're trying to sync up, and he misses the rope by, inches. And there's even this great shot. It's almost like the Sistine Chapel, where instead of it being God's hand and man's hand, it's his hand and the cable, and it just falls this short. And at this moment, you know you're gone. That's it. There's no, this is death. You miss death by inches, or salvation by inches. And that's where we find Joel is just trying again desperately to reach out for that connection. And it's because of a singular decision. And you could probably rewind the clock and go, well, it was actually multiple things that led to that thing. It may be, but it's that moment where he's met with a fork in the road. He goes, what do I do? Do I tell her the truth, and do I trust her, or do I lie to her to protect her? And so many people at the end of part 1 go, this is the whole conversation of like, I disagree. That's on brand for Naughty Dog. This isn't a new conversation that I had with part 2. It was part 1 when he said, a lot of people said, Joel, how could he do that? He doomed humanity. He could have saved the world. What do you think, Troy? Like, he did. That girl was his world. And if she wasn't worth saving, then neither were we. So you don't save the world by saving 6 billion people. You save it by saving one. That I can do. I can't make the world a better place, but I can make our world better for him, or I can make him a better human for this world. And that happens by teaching him tolerance, by teaching him love, and to teaching him to replace anger with love. If all I've done is fueled his anger and told him what to be mad at, that is me doing not only a disservice to him, but ultimately a disservice to the world.
Completely. Audience, we are going to be throwing questions to Troy's way in around half an hour. So rack up those questions and get them lined up with a little screen in front of us so we can see them all there. So do get them prepped, and we'll happily push them in Troy's direction. Other than those which ask him if he can do the voiceover for your game. Right. So unless it's going to make $1 million. But I mean, we have now seen, because previously when we're working together and we're working with, we've done the, plenty of times Imre and I have worked together and we've been in the voiceover booth. We did that Dead Rights and Paul Lighting and Matt Smith, the Doctor for me as well, and stuff like that. That was very much still, it was capturing a good performance, it was capturing a good performance in the booth. It was getting good motion capture, getting that data cleaned up. But we've transcended that, and the relationship between the developer and the artist who is creating that performance has exponentially transcended what came before. Clearly, as Imre indicated, Naughty Dog played a massive part in that. I don't think that we at Supermassive would have gone as far as we did with Until Dawn and the capture performance there had that not been established in Uncharted and Last of Us. So where is that going now? How much are you now firmly part of the development team and that process and bringing that performance, even at the writing stage?
Man, you are unknowingly setting me up for just accolade after accolade with the person who sat there to your left.
Well, he's my bud. What else can I do?
He's the reason why I'm sat in front of you today. Where did we meet? It was the BAFTAs, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Oh no. You know how we met? I forgot. So as a goof, I was at, God, where was I? It was like GameSpot or somewhere. And I was just bouncing around on a little, press tour. And I did some stuff with Dan Reichert. And they were like, hey, there's this really funny thing. There's this game called I Am Bread. And there's no VO. And we just thought it'd be hilarious if you just did like this, I Am Bread thing. And like you did the VO for it and you like voiced the bread. And I was like, is there a script? They're like, no. We literally came up with this 5 minutes ago. I was like, I'm in. So I jumped in, and for some reason, I had no idea who the developer was, no idea about the team, no idea about the game. But I immediately recognized, I was like, oh, this is a physics-based game. It's incredibly challenging. And I was like, what a great existential, thing for us to be discussing is a piece of bread discovering its purpose and just trying, this Sisyphean task to get there. And so I just, made up shit like I always do. And they and sent it out into the internet. And then bosses saw it. And they were like, excuse me, first of all, are you making fun of us or are you the coolest person ever?
Because we didn't know about this, right? This happened, like we didn't know it's going to happen.
Yeah, this wasn't like a developer sponsored thing at all. It was like, you guys, somebody got stoned and was like, let's make a video for the internet. Troy, you're here. So we did that. And it was so, and next time we know, like we reached out and they were like, hey, we thought it was really cool. They reached out to my agent. They were like, what Troy did was great. We should work together. And I sat up and my agent was just like, that was a great note from the developer. I'm like, no, get them on the phone. Like I want, if somebody laughed at that, I want to work with them. And so I don't know, maybe a couple months later, I'm sat in this, I find my way through that like maze, that labyrinth of offices. And I meet this guy who's equally my height, and bearded. I think my beard was pretty epic at that point too. And we just like, how do we do this? How do we work together? What do we find together? And Imre was the first person that I sat and I was like, dude, I think I want to make games. Like I've participated in one form or another with this industry for so long. And I've been able to, I'm only here in front of you because I was a part of something that you respect. So that I get to, bask in that glow. It's not necessarily, it's secondhand to me. Like, oh my God, I love that game. I was in that game. So somehow that game vouches for me. And that's why I get to be in front of you. And then hopefully in the course of our conversations, there's a new respect that is imbued just to me outside of being anything that I'm a part of. And we go, all right, how do we work together? So here I am going, what do we do? And Imre was the first person who's like, if you want to get in the trenches, you're going to get dirty. Like, are you sure you want to do this? I'm like, yeah. He goes, great. Then we're going to do a game jam. And I'm going to have you be a part of this. And I got to see how little I know about the development process and how much I thought that I knew. And the beauty of these things, you guys probably know game jams. This was my first, foray into this, but it's like what you're going to watch is basically, scientists have been trying to recreate the Big Bang in a lab, forever. And they do that. And like what we do is we go, I'm going to show you the entire life cycle of a game over the course of up to maybe 3 days. But you can literally watch as it goes. I think I have an idea. Okay. So then we maybe execute it again, and that's a dead deck. Boom. And it's gone. And it's just like thrown out. And I'm like, that was a brilliant, like I got fascinated by these ideas. And everyone was like, no. Like you could make these games. And I immediately go all the way down the road with this. Like, oh my God, I can see the marketing for this. And he's like, that's not the point of the exercise. I hope this game fails. Because it's the Kobayashi Maru. You're not a captain of a ship until you have been faced with the unwinnable battle. You're not going to win. So when do you quit? When do you stop spending resources, including not only money and people's time, but also how callous do you want your heart? Like this is a hard process. And the best thing that you can learn, the best thing that I learned was going, let it go. It's that moment where, Sean Connery looks down at Harrison Ford in Last Crusade and he says, Indiana, let it go. The thing that you've been chasing, that's not it. And I need you to recognize that in this moment because you're about this close from losing it all. And I got to witness that. So what was the question? How do we meet?
Well, that was, but it's a. I mean, I'm still figuring out the fact that you're as tall as he is because he was at my wedding as one of my best men, and then there's Jason next to you. He's 6'4". Honestly, I felt like a damn hobbit at my own wedding.
Yeah.
I needed every photo to be forced perspective, but it was really about.
Who's directing this wedding? Peter Jackson? What's going on here?
He should have. But it's about the importance now to capture that performance, even at the writing stage, and then to realize that through, and your contribution to that and the embracing of technology that allows that performance and the minutiae of that performance to come out. That is a very recent thing. So,
while you're thinking, so what's interesting about this is that I remember working with amazing actors as early as like late 90s. And oftentimes it felt that we as developers simplify down their work in a step, in a process, in a pipeline.
Right.
And I think we didn't do justice to the performance because frankly the technology couldn't.
Yeah, we were restricted by limitations, so was your performance.
It was simple. And it's like, I think the difference is that the fidelity that the performance now can come through in the game. Yeah. Sure. And the difference it makes, I think, is significantly bigger because of that, right?
I agree with that. Somebody asked me, like, what's the difference between doing VO and doing like performance capture? And I said, it's a commerce of trust, tools and trust. If less tools are afforded to me, then I am giving more trust to the animators, to the overall director, for them to be able to go, this was my intent when you hired me to do this gig and quote, bring your character to life. I was presented with that task and I'm going to do everything I can with the tools that are given me, this microphone, and give you enough of that juice to be able to go, this will help drive the animation. This really helps sell the stakes, the space, all of that, the relationships. But it's 100% me giving that trust to them. Inversely, if they go, okay, we're going to spend more money and we're going to, because every game, if you wanted to do it, you can go get Unreal, or you can go get Unity, and you can buy assets of character models and you can animate those things around and give you some pretty you can even get great text to speech. Like you can do some pretty, there's amazing tools now that are available, not to the AAA, or even to the III, but to the indiest of indiest developers, where you can make a great looking game and you don't need this. But if you want to try to achieve certain things, then you have to incorporate certain technologies and certain components. Some of those are actors, and a lot of times that's performance capture, but it's not a necessity. It is definitely a luxury. So if someone goes, we're going to spend a lot of dollars. And on average, if we do a day on the performance cap stage with actors, crew, cameras, everything, is probably going to clock in somewhere around $50,000 to $75,000 a day. It's a lot of money. And most days or most games are probably going to shoot somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 50 days total. Sometimes more, sometimes less, but on average, 30 to 50 days. So that decision to spend that amount of resources, and by the way, that is out of the total budget. So publisher goes, here, developer, here's your money. And they go, we're going to spend a lot of that with actors, on actors. And that's not including necessarily the actors' payments or anything else. That's just getting people on a stage ready to shoot a scene. All of the other things that go into play, buying the assets, all of that shit. So whenever a developer says, here is that, we're entrusting all of those tools to you. They're trusting me. And the more tools they give me, if now it's my likeness, there's more trust that they're giving me. There is inherently a level of respect that I have to then offer them as trade, that as the beads for the goods. Like, this is what we're trying to do, is find a way for us to bridge the gap and not walk too close to that uncanny valley where people go, it doesn't look right. And that is still to this day, with fidelity and everything being as great as it is, there's still something in us that goes, it's not real. And that to me is not an LOF issue or LOD issue. That 100% is, if you rely on that tech to give you realism, if you rely on that pipeline, if you rely on that process to be what escalates your performances, that's not it. It has to be on the page. And if it's the only way it can get on the page is the conceit of it has to be driven 100% by, I don't care if this is what's going to sell. I don't care if this is what's going to get me a 95 Metacritic. I don't care any of that. This is the story we have to tell. This is the experience we have to create, and we have to do it right now. And if you don't go for broke, Naughty Dog literally thought there's like, this could go one of two ways. This could sink us. We have no idea. We have no idea. People are going to be like Spielberg in the 80s, all of a sudden trying to do like Empire of the Sun. Like, you're the guy that does Goonies. Do those kind of movies. Robert Zemeckis trying to do a big thriller. It's like, these people, if you're not constantly evolving, constantly risking, and even Neil, he said, if I'm not shaking my hands, like if my hands are not shaking to press send on the email that contains the scenes we're going to shoot the following day, I didn't write it well. You have to be filled with fear, but do it fearless. I want to be scared every moment, but I want to be fearless doing whatever I'm doing.
Fear is the right driver in those instances to succeed, right? Yeah.
Sure.
So we observe, of course, your acting in many, games and outstanding performances, and I think many of the audience probably heard your music as well. And we had some game design discussions, and you had some splendid and weirdly innovative takes on gameplay as well. Like, not to act like too much of a fanboy, but like you clearly
Go
have
on.
a lot of
Yeah.
a lot of great skills. Like, how do you find? Because I can totally see this also being a hindrance. That you go in and, as you said, your relationship with the writer director, and you think, well, I know better. So I guess it's a two-part question. That do you think it helps or hinder you as an actor that you have these other knowledges and you might feel confident in challenging certain things, or is it empowering your acting? And secondly, how do you see yourself long term? Do you see yourself as like the actor guy, or do you think there is a way for you to, I don't know, become a director, become a game designer, or is it a weird mixture of these arts?
Man, I love you. I think, to answer your question, if I go in thinking that I know more, I'm automatically putting myself in a position of detriment and deficiency. There was a moment where I was at a convention, and you guys may have watched the Cobra Kai show, or even better, Karate Kid, the original source material for that show. And the guy that plays the bad sensei, Martin Kove, and where this convention had the presence of mind to put all of their like celebrity guests in one hotel, and that was just sequestered just for them. And so we can like move about freely and whatever. And we were all down in the bar having a drink, and Martin Kove is posted up against the wall, arms folded just like that, like he does in the movie. And he's just like steely-eyed gaze. And I'm like trying to have a conversation. I think I was talking with David Hayter. And I was like, yeah, man. So I just kept catching him out of the corner of my eye. And I said, hold on, man. And I walked over. I was like, hey, man, I'm Troy. He was like, Martin, nice to meet you. I'm like, you're freaking me out because you terrified me in my childhood. And here you are. And he was like, and he just laughed. And he's this warm person. He goes, isn't it funny that the role that got you into the room is the very role from which you cannot escape? And there have been meetings, there have been projects where people are like, so we're thinking that for this character, he's like a grizzled survivor. Maybe he has a little bit of a Texas accent. I'm like, oh, come on, man. Like I kind of did that before. And there's been projects that I've walked away from because really they didn't want me. They wanted Joel. And I'm like, so here's what I'm going to stop you right there, because I see down the road where Jason Schreier is going to shred you for this, or whatever it is. I'm sure he loves me invoking his name. But you're going to get, you need to iterate on your character. And sometimes I need to take the training wheels off for you. And I'm going to tell you who you need to get. And I've walked away from projects before, and it was the better move for both them and for me. But if I walk in, and I keep sounding like I'm shilling for Neil. He doesn't need my help. But my default response, if I had a problem with a line or a scene, was to change it. With all of the mini scripts and books that I've written. And so I would, 0, by the way. That's not true, but nothing published. So I would say, hey man, I think for maybe this line, I don't know if he would say this. I think he would do like, okay. And he would think about it, and he was like, so let's walk through why that's the choice. Are you just having stumble with, is it literally the words you're kind of having a struggle with? Or are you incapable of saying those words because you're an idiot, or what? And so he finally came to me, he was like, maybe there's something that you don't understand about the character. Maybe there's something that you don't understand about the scene. So instead of your default response being, hey, we should change it, maybe if you asked a question. And I was like, man, that's a really good way to approach this. And so now that's kind of my whole thing in general. Let's say I'm sat and it's just not a good script. It's whoever's writing it is really trying hard, and the concept is good, but the execution, like ideas are cheap. The expense is found in the execution. And maybe they just haven't ponied up the cash for the expense of the execution. And I can see it, and they probably know it too. Or there's something about the story, the character, the project that I don't understand. But if I always come at it going, maybe there's something I don't know yet. And I go, hey, I got a question. You said this, but then there's actually this. There's been a lot of those meetings where they looked at each other and they're like, very good. You're the first person to pick up on that. Now we can tell you what this is really about. But if I come and go and, now you guys just don't know how to write. Like actually weren't allowed to tell you everything. So I always try to take the position of, what can I learn? Maybe I learn more about what bad writing is. So I learn how to avoid that pitfall. Maybe I understand that it's really hard to make games, and it's far easier to screw it up than it is to put it on a shelf. It is so easy for a game to die. So easy. And if the last year and a half taught us anything, that's why I think I told this in, some conversation that someone later told me, like, you should never say that. I was like, I feel like every Metacritic, every award should be given on a curve, because it's like we watched people do an Olympic event, and it's like, oh, by the way, we're also going to cut off your hands and your feet. Now do the same thing you normally do. And the fact that you take, whether it be a team of 180 people, I think, put out Ghost of Tsushima, the most ambitious game that studio has ever made, in the middle of a pandemic, and not one iota of quality was sacrificed. From performance, story, music, design, art, anything. It's a beautiful, incredibly immersive game. And I firmly believe, Brian Fleming might disagree, but they put on the shelf the game that they conceived. And they worked their asses off for that game for years, iterating upon iterating upon iterating on an idea. And they finally, it's not like they did Second Son and were like, now we're going to do a game about samurai. That thing evolved and iterated and died and was brought back to life and then thrown out the window. And it's such a beautiful process. I hope one day that they just open up the books and show you what the developer diary of making Ghost of Tsushima was, because it is a fascinating experience. And Billy Harper, Brian Fleming, all of those guys deserve to be lauded. God, I keep getting lost in these tangents, but
it's a piece of art. I mean, from the opening title,
it is 100% a piece of art.
It's a piece of art, and games. I think there are still very few games that drive you so emotionally that you will end up crying. I still think that games haven't reached the level where I'm always crying in films, always, but it's very, very few games. BioShock, did it for me. Last of Us did it for me. Tsushima did it for me at the end of that, we have to kind of keep pushing that emotional boundary, haven't we?
I feel like crying is, so I agree with you, but I will take it a step further. Crying is a result, and crying is easy to do. And I look at Denzel Washington, man, and the thing that Denzel can do is, sure, he can cry, but he cries when he wants to. If you've ever seen Glory, there is a scene where it's like, it's masterful. It's masterful. And that was supposed to be a vehicle for Matthew Broderick. That was like him going, hey, everybody, I'm not just Ferris Bueller anymore. I can really act. See? And Denzel goes, hold my beer. And just goes right past him. It's like, Morgan, wait up. I'm coming with you. And even Carrie Ellis and Matthew Broderick were just like these two white guys in the back going, damn it. So it's a beautiful, beautiful movie.
Yeah.
But it was like they were the guys that were supposed to be pushed up to the front. And it was all about, it's what the movie should be about. It's not about the white dudes that led them. It's about the black men who fought and died and were not recognized for 200 years, almost 200 years for this. Anyway, watch the movie. It's one of the best Civil War movies I think that's ever been made. But watching Denzel, he knows when that moment needs to hit, and he is serving the director, he is serving the cameraman, he is serving the composer, because he's giving the composer, if all you did was cut to a shot of Denzel crying, the composer has no moment to score, except for just some swelling strings that accompanies it. But if you watch that scene, there is a moment where a single tear that has been just lingering here, he goes, now drop. And that's when the score kicks in. And so it's not even about the can you make you cry? It's, can you hold it back to where you no longer have any other choice? There is nothing else. And even beyond just crying, can I make a conversation? Can I make you question? Can I make you consider? It's not that cry. I want other C's. I want conversation, consideration. I want all of those things to happen. If I can do that, if I can make you critique, if I can make you think, that's what I want to do. I can make anybody cry. Almost. Laura Bailey can make anybody cry. How about that? I can make you do some things. But I really want people to change the way that they think. I want them to change the way they think. And right now we're at we are walking around with weapons with our phones, and we're able to just eviscerate anybody at anything completely with anonymity, with no recourse whatsoever. And we've lost the art of discourse. We've lost the art of being able to look at each other, and especially this last year when we've been so separated. This is a skill that we're going to have to relearn. Being face to face and sharing an opposing opinion, regardless of political party, regardless of position on societal issues that should have none. It should just be fact versus non-fact, truth versus fiction. That we're not in a position to be able to have the auspicious privilege of an opinion. We don't have that. I don't have, when it comes to my son's health, I don't have a position. I don't have the benefit of having an opinion on this, because all I have is risk. And if somebody says, do this and you'll mitigate risk, great, I'm going to do that. And that's not me being a sheep or following something. It's me just simply going, he's more important than my opinion on this. That's all I care about, is just his safety and his well-being. Again, I'd walk into a bus. If someone had looked at me and said, by the way, this syringe is filled not only with COVID, but every other virus that's ever been conceptually thought about in the world. If we give it to you, he'll never get it. I'd be like, right arm or left? What do you want to do? But to go back to Imre's question, before I go off again, what do I want to do? It's that. I want to create conversations. I want people to, and I believe that I've been fortunate enough to find a foothold, whether it be Joel or Booker or Joker or whatever. I found a way to get my foot in the door to where I could be sat in front of people like Imre, sat in front of people like you, Nick, and go, here's a conversation that I want to have. And if I can do that, then I could go, there's this part of the conversation that I want to have. I got the opportunity to direct the performances, I have to be very careful, because people go, I want to direct. Well, what do you mean in games? Like, it's not a film. There's no auteur that happens. There cannot be in games. Even Kojima, who is very much the spiritual successor of what an auteur would be in games, still has an incredible team of people behind him that are executing his ideas. But that level of, what I want to do is I'm fascinated with the construction of scene as it involves writing and actors. And I believe that there's so much that can be conveyed by a camera, almost more than dialogue or performance. Because I can take a conversation like Heat, the coffee shop scene in Heat, Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, having a conversation opposite of each other. It's just two guys in a coffee shop having a cup of coffee talking, until you contextualize and realize that's a police, detective, and that's a career criminal. And they have pulled over to the side of the road and decide they're going to have this conversation. Where I put that lens is how you view that scene. That is how if I go high angle down, then I'm going to make them subservient. If I go low angle up, I'm going to make them heroes. If I do a Dutch angle, I'm going to make you feel off kilter for the scene. I can convey so much about my story. I can put you in a place just where I put the lens. Now, that's how you do it in a show or a film. How do I do that in a game? How do I do that in VR, where you constantly have authorship of camera? So things like that, answering those questions, being able to partner with people that I really respect for the games that they've made, that's what I want to do. I want to walk into that trench, roll up my sleeves, and go, either way this goes, we may die with blood and dirt on our faces, but let's do it together. That's what I want to do. If at the end of that, the result is not only crying, but conversation, critique, care, compassion, if I can do that, that is something that is worth spending however many of those 480 months. That is something I'd be willing to give my life for.
Did make my wife cry while watching me play Last of Us, by the way. She walked out in tears.
And also that. If I
And
could do
also
that too.
There is a fantastic Indian, many thousands years old epic, and that has the line which says that if you listen carefully, you'll be someone else by the end. And that's, you know, the power of storytelling. That's what it is, right? That we have a responsibility for the stories we tell. Because if the player listen carefully, and our job is to make them listen carefully, but if they listen carefully, they're going to leave as someone else. So yeah, there you go.
If all somebody wants to do is watch, go make a movie.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And by the way, I've been responsible for saying, out of my own insecurities, saying terrible things about David Cage that I never should have said. And when I played Detroit Becoming Human, I really I ate so much crow while playing that game, because he really is a very gifted storyteller and game maker. I think that I found this avatar for myself of not thinking that making games was enough. And I had to, well, yeah, I'm an actor, but I mean, yeah, I'm doing these games, but I'm also going to do TV and film, because somehow that externally validated me as an actor. Whereas after, it was like people going like, dude, I really want to do games. I'm like, yeah, you really do. And it's one of the hardest, corners of the industry to get into. That's great that you got to play a cop on CSI. Or that's great. And then that's noble work. But the roles that I get cast for, nobody would ever cast me in a show or a film. And there have been so many things where it's like, dude, you're great. You're too tall. Or no, we need brown eyes, not blue, because our lead has blue eyes. And that's just weird if we do that. So all of those things, games go, we don't care about that. What do you quintessentially bring to this character that nobody else could? That is regardless of anything else. How can you change the role? And that's so much when actors walk in, they're so filled with fear. And it has everything to do with, they hope that audition, that game serves them somehow. One of my favorite quotes from David Milch is, the exigencies of the artist situation are always of the financial. It's how can I get that money to do this thing? That's what spawns us to do this. I just want someone to pay me to do this so I don't have to do anything else. But Richard Burton, one of my other favorite quotes, they said, Sir Richard, how do you do the acting so well? He says that it's quite easy. I will give you everything, but if you give me nothing in return, I will take it from you. And it sounds like an arrogant comment, but really, it is because Richard Burton understood that the scene is a beast, and the beast must eat. And our job as performers, as designers, as directors, as writers, is to feed the beast. If we don't, that beast will die. So in that sense, we are professional zookeepers. That is all we do. And ain't nobody coming to the zoo to see the zookeepers. They come to see the beasts. So if that is what we devote ourselves to, and that is giving, that is like, what do you need to do? Is like, well, you need to cut this entire chapter. Is like, great. If that's what I need to do, then that's what I will do. But if you're making a game and all you want to do is have people watch, once again, I'm going to quote my dear friend Imre. What are the verbs? What are you doing? Are you running? Are you jumping? Are you shooting? Are you solving puzzles? What are the verbs? So what if you have a great idea and it's like, well, it takes place in the third eon of the Zandalors, but of course this is going to be a setup for when the Garakians are going to come. I don't care about any of that. What are the verbs? What are you doing? And every time I came up with an idea, I would run that process through. That Imre says, great. You're going to bring the Zorakians? Oh my God, no one has never had the balls to do that with the Zorakians. What are the verbs? Well, I mean, really, it could be anything. No, it can't. It could be one thing. What are you going to do? Because otherwise you're just, if you have millions of dollars like Activision and you want to make a game like Destiny where it's like, it's all of it. It's all of the things. What do you want it to be? It's a shooter. It's an RPG. It's got just everything. Go for it. But if it's you and your buddy making a game, or you by yourself making a game, what are the verbs? I look at it. Imre again, he and I are going to talk. We could talk ad nauseum about this. Probably you too, Nick. The inside is an example of a perfect game. It is a perfect game. It is succinct. It is beautiful. It exercises and executes its idea flawlessly. It's short. It's attainable. And even that studio spent years polishing. But what are the verbs? Side scroller. That's all it is. Go from left to right. Solve the puzzle. Move on. It is the simplest game. No narrative setup. And it won Best Story. That is the most fascinating thing. I will never forget that guy winning that award at the BAFTA. Goes, I don't even like acting in games. And left the stage. That was his acceptance speech. We're all like, it's a great moment.
But simplicity is sometimes the hardest thing to achieve. Sometimes it's easier to go with complex. You might never succeed in that, but simplicity is really hard. There's the art form, isn't it?
I would much rather, I'm working on a game right now where they're like, we're going to add this and we'll, yes, we're going to have to do this and we'll add and add and add. I'm like, yo, all I can think about is Michelangelo. And it's like, how did you carve the Pieta? And he was like, I just carved away everything that wasn't Jesus. And so much of this is not painting. It's not adding layers or adding mediums. It's about chiseling away what isn't there. One of my favorite stories is Michelangelo and the David. Here he is in Florence, walking past the Duomo every day, going to his shop. And off to the left, if you've ever been to Florence and seen the Duomo, there's this right tower that you can go up, and on the left is like basically the back garden to the Duomo. And sitting in the back there was this, inside, the walls and the floors are just pure marble. And this opulent, reflection of the conception of what they thought heaven was. And in the back, hidden away, covered in weeds, was this block of marble that had been rejected because it was flawed. It wasn't perfect. Or so the church thought. And Michelangelo walking past every day going, man, can I have that? I'm like, no, it's ours. I'm like, yeah, but you just kind of threw it out with the garbage. It's just too big to put it out. The trash guys won't pick it up, those guys. It's like, no, you can't have it. Okay. For 6 months, every day, walking past in the rain, walking past in the snow, birds pooping on it, every grass growing, all of it. And he finally like, can I have that? And finally, after 6 months of petitioning, they were like, fine, you can haul it away, take it. What are you going to do with it? And for the next 2.5 years, he carved the David. And to me, that is what we are given as creatives. We are given a rejected piece of marble. And people will often tell us that it's a poor decision. It's the wrong decision. There's nothing that we can do with it. We should wait for a better piece of marble. And it is incumbent upon us as creatives, especially in a time where light is at a premium and darkness is in abundance, that we take the two simple tools that we're given, a hammer and a chisel, and we realize that we can truly create art if we just set our mind and our time to it. We can accomplish something that centuries later people will look at and marvel. And that is one of I had no desire to see the David when I first went to Florence, but sat in front of it. You want to talk about what made me cry? It was that. It was the David.
Wonderful.
Beautiful.
Shall we move
Yes.
to questions?
Yes.
Sure.
Do you want to go first?
Yes. So first of all, in the audience, if you have questions, please do share. We would love to ask them. Now, the first one, the question starts with the words, I'm a huge fan of yours. And I'm sorry, I am going to do a sidetrack because I remember the two of us sitting in my local pub and you chatting with the one of the staff there. And after you left, the guy comes to me and says, your mate, he looks a little bit like Troy Baker.
I remember that night.
And I said, yeah, he does a little bit like, yeah. So the first question was, I'm a huge fan of yours. You've done voice acting for a wide range of mediums. Do you approach things differently when it comes to voice acting in animation, like Young Justice, versus voice acting in video games such as BioShock?
It's a great question. Who asked that?
We don't have
we
names.
don't know.
No, sorry.
Yes.
Dear Anonymous, yes, I have to. It is. If I walk in and go, all right, what character do you want? And he's like, okay, we're gonna give you Guy 403. That's always a good one. Then I am doing a disservice to not only the creatives, because it is based upon the assumption that they're trying to write a unique character that is endemic to their world. If I walk in and just appropriate this character and just plug him in here, it will eventually will hit a place where it feels false. And we all know it, but probably by then it's too baked in to do anything about it. You as the audience will be able to immediately suss out and go, that sounds like Joel. And that's what we want to avoid. I don't want to pluck this character that you loved and then just place them in this scene because it worked that time. Surely it's going to work here. I have to approach it as a unique situation every time. That comes from me having a conversation with the creative. If I'm going to be a lead character, if I'm going to be like your Soldier A, I don't need to go, so tell me about this man in hat. Where does it come from? He's like, he wears a hat and he goes, can I take your order, please? And he leaves. That's all we need you to do. Is like, yes. But what is he really trying to say? There's no existential conversation that we're having with that guy. He's a functional character, and be glad that they're paying you to do that. There are so many gigs that I get that are like, you guys gave me money for that? Oh, suckers. And I leave. And it's great. And they're like, that we don't care. That's what Family Guy is. That's what American Dad is. They're like, we need you to set up the joke or we need you to just be there. It's one line, you're done. It's a 5-minute session and we give you dollars for it. I'm like, and I get to be a part. I finally, after 4 sessions on a Family Guy and 20 years of loving that show, finally by happenstance was like, wait, that was me. And I got to see my name in the credits. That's my pay. There wasn't like this, yes, but that character just served such an important, no, it's just do the role and get out of there. But if it's a lead character, if it's something like, we had a big conversation on Young Justice. Dude, I'm massive fans of theirs. I grew up watching Gargoyles, and Young Justice. I loved that show. And that show is really trying to have a conversation about societal issues that are relevant to us, set against the backdrop of, modern day gods. I love it. I want to have conversations about that and approach that differently. And if I apply that mentality, then I inherently feel like we will come up with a character. If I do that well, you'll do what Imre's friend did at that pub that night. You're like, wait, that was Troy? That's what I want to do. I don't want to be recognizable. I want to be Gary Oldman. I want to be like, wait a minute. There's no way that's who that was. Then I've done my job. That means all you saw was the character. So that is my approach every project that I take, where it's like, how can I make sure that people don't know that it's me? Because that's how I hopefully stay employed too. Because if people know every time, you're going to get this guy. All of us love Jeff Goldblum in Guardians of the Galaxy, but we're like, Jeff Goldblum, he's great. I love Jeff Goldblum. He's a fantastic actor. I love him. But you can never get away with the fact that you're watching Jeff Goldblum. So that's what I'm trying to avoid, if that makes any sense.
No, completely. Okay, so these are all anonymous, but
All right.
somebody's asking, what have you learned between playing your first character, Matt Baker from Brothers in Arms, to playing Joel from The Last of Us?
We do not have enough time. Man, so much. How do I distill that down to a single answer? I think that Richard Burton quote was really an unlock for me because I never understood. I understood as a notion and as a platitude to be a generous or giving actor, but I didn't know what that meant. And where I started learning that was in the ranch house scene of The Last of Us, where Ashley pushed me, and that was her giving to the scene and shaking me out of it because, again, I had this tendency to not look at my scene partner. And I was so wrapped up in my own performance and my own choices and my own ideas that I wouldn't look at people. And I would just kind of, well, I don't know what we're going to do here. They're like, what are you looking at? Are you blind? What are you looking at? And it's a strong choice if the character's blind, but I don't think he would make it in this post-pandemic world. So what I've learned would fill volumes and far more than the time that we've been allotted for today. Somehow I want to put down, like I did like a 6-week thing where I was like, I'm not an acting coach or an acting teacher. I can show you some of the things that I've learned. And it was probably the most frustrating 6 weeks for actors because they're like, great, we're going to hear from this guy that did all these things that we love, teach us how to act. I'm like, so first of all, don't be late. And they're like, what? And like, that's literally, I gave an entire hour dissertation on never be the one you're waiting on. And that was a lesson that I learned from doing this movie Comanche Moon from Steve Zahn. And he just said it very offhandedly. He's like, never be the one they're waiting on. And what that implies is that you are in service to that story. You are in service to that crew. There's no one that deserves to be talked down to. There's no one that deserves to be yelled at. You are not the most important person on that set. Be first in and last out if you can be. And anybody that shows up late, you're telling whether or not this is what you want to communicate or not. You're telling everybody that you're the most important person there. There's a great story that Leonardo DiCaprio, when he was doing The Departed, shows up late on set and he finds that the entire cast and crew has been assembled outside his trailer. And right in the middle is Scorsese. And he's like, hey guys, sorry I'm late. I'll be with you in a moment. He goes, oh, we're not starting until you go one by one and apologize to everybody. And you know who told that story? Leonardo DiCaprio. That to me is like, what have I learned? It's that. It has nothing to do with like, oh, this is how you act better. All of that stuff, all of my successes have taught me nothing. They've taught me nothing. It's what did I do? If you knew what you were aware of, you never would have done in the first place. You crossed over treacherous waters. You somehow slayed the giant by just chucking a rock over your shoulder and it happened to hit him in the head. He fell. I've tripped backwards into this career. But what I've learned along the way, never be the one they're waiting on. Feed the beast. Don't think that you're the most important person. Ask questions instead of make statements. Brian Fleming, speaking of Sucker Punch, I've told this story a lot, having a postmortem with him and him telling me like, you're a very powerful force. I'm like, thank you. He goes, not a compliment. You will disrupt. And that's stuff that I was being told when I was in primary school, when I was 8 years old, 10 years old. And is now learning how to apply that going, it's misdirected. When someone tells you, like if you're the kid in the hall, if you're the one that doesn't fit in, great, because you can't stand out if you're trying to fit in. Don't fit in. There's a different place. You just simply haven't found the place that you're supposed to stand firmly in. But don't line up with the rest of them. Stand out, for God's sake. Be different. But also be willing to ask the question of going, curious, how does that work? What do you think? That's the dude. I could go on and on about. You're asking the right questions. I want to validate you're asking that because it's not about what you did. It's about what you learned.
Yeah, completely.
Because I've learned a lot on some really bad projects.
We always learn the most from the bad projects.
Yeah, it's like, don't ever do that one again. Oh my God. How did somebody get money to do that?
I think that's been mostly my career.
Yeah.
It's your question.
Which question do you want to do? Because there's some really good questions.
There are. Can we scroll down a second, please, Camilla? Just have a little look at the questions down below, because there are so many coming through.
And I've been incredibly long-winded, so I'm happy to go longer if you guys need.
I kind of like scroll up again. Kind of think the second one.
Okay, you want to go? Go.
Okay. Were you expecting the reaction of the public to the scene of the prologue of The Last of Us to be as strong as it was? Did it surprise you that it affected so many people emotionally? Because we talked about the construction of the scene earlier,
Right.
but we didn't talk necessarily about the reaction of the scene.
I mean, from the onset, we knew that what we were doing was, we knew what we were getting into. We didn't go, what? We just didn't know how well we were going to be able to pull it off. You can never, I love telling this story, and there may be people who've heard me tell it before, and it bears repeating. I was at a convention in Indiana, I think. And father comes up to me and he goes, very stoic dude, played The Last of Us. Like, cool, man. He goes, I got to the prologue scene and I got a daughter. It's like, no, I understand. He goes, no, you don't. So, okay, I'll just shut up and listen. And he said, I got to the end of that scene and I put the controller down. I turned the TV off and I walked in and I picked up my daughter and I held her and I cried. And I was like, yeah. He goes, I thought that was going to be the end of the story. And he said, for every day, for like months, he walked past the TV and goes, and I would always catch that PlayStation in the corner of my eye and it would just stare at me. And I realized that I was leaving it unfinished, but I wasn't prepared to do it because it made such an impact on me. Because I finally sat down and I played the game. And he said, I got to the giraffe scene and that giraffe moment. And he said, I set the controller down again and I cried again because I realized that sometimes you have to push through the hard times to find your giraffe moment. And I had no response to that. I was like, here we were down the Culver stages. It's no longer there. We're sweating in these hot suits in this white room on a Tuesday. And so what are we looking at? Is like, there's going to be like these giraffes and we'll kind of cue you with the ball on a stick so you can kind of have the same eye line as it goes across. And so this is like, we're wanting this to be like a moment of respite. I was like, okay. And so you're walking through and everything is ridiculous about that scene. And I love when people say your performance in that is so great. I'm like, thank you. But that's only part of it. Because my performance is simply a framework that gets applied to a character model that then an animator takes his or her incredible skill and passion and brings that thing and gives it a soul and makes it animate. And then that person is going to then be coupled with the art style and the world that's being conceived and executed on screen in front of you and how those characters interact. Somebody has to actually do ones and zeros to make sure that physics apply to this world. And there's 300 people at the studio, and then there's hundreds of other people at Sony that are making that thing work. That's why it's impactful. Not one person can do that. It takes literally hundreds of people to make that game happen. But there's no way that we could have ever conceived that any moment in that game would be as impactful and as perennial as it's proven to be. We knew that we were making something good, but we had no idea the impact that would have. And I think going into part two, that was something that I had to lay at the foot of the door because just because I'm aware of that can poison the scene. Is this as good as the giraffe moment? Oh, wait, so this is kind of like the moment we had in the prologue. Will this have as much impact as Sarah dying? Am I as good of an actor as I would? What if people realize I'm not? What if they have a problem with this? What if they can't? All of that. None of that exists to Joel, Ellie, Tommy, Maria, Dina. None of it. All they know is they're in this world. They're in Jackson. They're in Seattle. And this is what's in front of them. I have to leave that behind. That's really what acting is. It's not remembering, it's forgetting.
Yeah.
It sure must be. I mean, game developers have this experience sometimes to try to do a sequel of something, and how can you live up to that? I mean, you know Mike Bithell quite well, and you know he's struggled the number of times he's asked for Thomas Was Alone 2, and how diligently he refuses for a very good reason, right? And it's what a challenge it is that he ever decides to do it, right? So I'm sure that for you as well, carrying the weight of that success into the performance.
But the reality is that Mike Bithell has done a sequel to Thomas Was Alone. And it's Subsurface Circular. And then he also did another sequel to that That was Solitaire Conspiracy.
Yeah.
So everything is a sequel. It's just not a sequel. It's not a continuation of that character's story. It's a continuation of the creator's story. So if someone goes, if you got dollars, somebody gave you money to go and make something, and then you get that again, net win. That is no matter what. Well, we really look at God of War. God of War is a sequel by name alone. Completely different characters, completely different world, similar gameplay, but it's a totally different thing. Someone from marketing decided that it would be better if they called it this. Same thing with Valhalla. Play Valhalla. Go back and play Brotherhood or Revelations, and then go play Valhalla and go, oh, that's the same game. That's a sequel. No, it's not. It's now a franchise.
Yeah.
It's anthological. So I believe that Mike Bithell has made his sequel many times to Thomas Was Alone, because Thomas Was Alone is what put Mike Bithell on the map as a game maker, even though he had made several games before then. That's what made people go, we'll let you do this again and again and again. And the second that you stop performing, no one's going to give you money to do that again.
But that's where the fear comes in, right? Because, you know, I hired Mike into Blitz, but they wouldn't let him do that title out of fear, the wrong kind of fear, that it was going to not be a Blitz title. And so he went and did it anyway, and look what happened.
Dude.
And, you know, they're no longer there.
I'll talk ad nauseum about Mike Bithell for so many reasons. You know, he's a brilliant designer. He challenges the ways that I think. He won't let me do a British accent, which just
why not? Why won't he let you do a British accent?
Just to continue the joke and out of principle. But I walked in for John Wick, and I was like, what if we made the character, sound like this? And he's like, no, I don't think we're going to do that. No. What if we make him like New York? All right, fine. But it's Mike Bithell is someone that for any developers, they should point to him, and he would hate that I'm saying this about him. That is in very much the way. There are very few games that I've ever handed to my wife and go, just play this. And we had just taken the train from London to Paris, and I had just finished Thomas Was Alone. And we get to the hotel, and my wife's favorite thing, whenever we get to a hotel, I have to immediately unpack. I put everything in the drawers, in the wardrobe, and all of the toiletries out, and I'm set. My wife wants to lie on the bed and watch whatever terrible TV is being broadcast to her. Like the worst program, the better, like Kardashian level. That's what she loves. So she walks in, she's doing her thing. I finish doing my thing, and I hand her my iPad. I was like, I need you to play this game. And she's like, she's not a gamer. And she goes, I don't really want to, I need you to play this game. Within 5 minutes, she was like, oh my God, I love him so much. I was like, that is the power of a good, simple game. And it was met with, Mike can't do this incredible complex characters. He's like, I can make a rectangle, a circle, and a square. And then maybe throw in a triangle. It's like, how can I make a game with what I have? And that is the reflection of a great thinker. That's someone going, okay, he's a MacGyver. He's like, I got a ballpoint pen, a paper clip, and a can of alcohol. What can I do with this? It's like I make a bomb. I don't know, dude. That to me is what makes him such a great game maker, is because he works with what he has, and he does it with exquisite simplicity and with excellence every time.
They asked me, why do you want to hire him, when I interviewed him? And I said, because he's a better designer than I am.
Damn straight, dude. I'm just that. Austin Wintry, one of my dearest friends, is Mike Bithell and really the podcast that I do with Alana, Mike, and Austin. One of the main reasons why I do it, because nobody needs to hear me talk more about this stuff, but it is constantly because if I am the smartest person in the room, I'm in the wrong room. I want to be the dumbest. I want to be, and this is something that Imre taught me as well, is like, you better surround yourself with people that are better than you. Don't be the best person in the room. Is like, then you're going to die. You can never grow. Be around people that make you go, I am incredibly ill-equipped to be in this room. They're smarter than me. They're faster than me. They're more successful than me. Those are the people that you want to be in, and own it. Don't try. I had to learn this. So it was a hard lesson for me to learn. And it would go down to why I would never tell people that I've never read that book, never seen that movie, never played that game. It took me years, and to an adult, the first time I ever admitted that I hadn't seen a movie that everybody has seen was with Travis Willingham, Yuri Lowenthal, and Liam O'Brien. And we were going to watch, it was like, dude, we should just go to Blockbuster. That's how long ago this was. And we should go get Aliens. And I'm like, yeah, that'd be awesome to watch. And love that movie. And they're like, yeah? Yeah, of course. With all of it, man. Just the best, when the part with the, love it. And we go back to my house and we're putting it in the DVD player. And it comes up and I was like, pause, I've never seen this movie before. And all of them looked at me and they're like, and it became the greatest movie they've ever seen. They're like, I can't believe that I get to be here with you when you get to experience, they mostly come out at night, mostly, all of that for the first time. And I found so much joy, and they found so much joy by going, I don't know anything about this. Everybody wants to be somebody's first when it comes to, what do you mean you've never seen Godfather? Oh my God. Sitting down right now. We're going to watch that right now. I don't know what he was talking about when he said Heat. To have that humility, you will find people gather you and go, I am you've never played Thomas Was Alone. You never played Inside. Oh my God. You've never played The Last of Us. Sit down right now. I'll play it with you right now. Yeah. Everybody wants that in their life. Be that person.
So last year we had the Pandemic release and everything
Sounds
changed.
Like a terrible Megadeth record, by the way.
Yeah, it was a terrible game. And everything changed. And we were originally planning this expo, and we decided to make it a digital expo. And some good friends came out to support it. Mike Bithell came out as our keynote. Imre came on to chat, always a very good friend to come and support. And this year they said, you need to make it bigger and better.
Well, I can get Troy, but I don't know that accomplishes that goal.
So I had a chat with Imre and I said, can you have a word with Troy and see if Troy will come and come on the show? And at our wedding, I gave the best men a gift each, and I gave him a piece of the Apollo spacecraft because as my friend, he's always pushing me higher and further to do better. That's wrong. That's why he's with me on the stage here, because he helps me make this bigger and better. But then he introduced me to you, and you've made this an exceptional expo for us. And you are a huge gentleman. In every single meeting we've had since that introduction to now, you've been kind and generous, thoughtful, humble, and I'm amazed by how much I've come to enjoy our talks as a person.
Man, thank you so much. And what an incredible standard to be held against. We are inherently storytellers. And it's the same thing that made us build that spaceship and go out into space to begin with. It's the thing that drew us out of caves, is this compulsion to experience. We want to experience love. We want to experience fear. We want to experience death. We want to experience those things. Again, it's the same reason why I carry this around. I don't want to be afraid of it. I want to live my life scared every moment, but fearless. And we are not teachers, developers, writers, actors. At our core, we're storytellers. That's all we're trying to do. And it's literally the thing that we are genetically predisposed to be. It's the reason why we created language in the first place. I have to tell you my story. There's this woolly mammoth over here. Dude. All I want to do is tell my story. However I can do that. If it's through a game, if it's through a movie, if it's through a song, or if it's through a discussion like this, a chat like that, all I'm doing is trying to tell my story. And what that means is that I'm compelled to be able to bring my story to you by whatever way I can. And a good story has a little bit of comedy, a little bit of action, a little bit of romance, a little bit of drama. That's a good story. So whenever I experience that, whenever you experience those moments where it feels tragic, that's your Act 2 closer. Get ready, because you're about to find that climax. That's just inherently what happens. That is the dynamic of life. We've been doing this for eons. But always remember, at your core, you are a storyteller. Tell your story and make sure your story can be heard.
Games Academy Expo Audience 2021, Mr. Troy Baker.
Thank you so much.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much, Troy. I really appreciate it, my dude.
Dude, such a good conversation, man. I'm grateful. Yeah, I want to do this again, and I want to be there with you guys. I can only imagine the conversation that we could have just there live.
Absolutely. There is a shanty festival with your name on it, and plenty of ale standing by for you. So we'll make that happen. But you've been extremely generous. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Troy.
Thank you. That's a wrap on Mr. Troy Baker, everybody. Thank you very much indeed. We are now going to shift over to the prize giving, which is going to be a technical feat of wizardry. So we may have to hang on while all that technical wizardry happens, and then we'll deal with any issues if they come up. But we're going to make that happen. So you're going to see us close out here with the GA trailer, and then you'll see us transfer over to there. But that's us. We're done with the guest talks for this year. So thank you very much indeed. And Troy, thank you again, sir. You're a gentleman.
Thank you, gents.
Thanks. We're done. Thank you.